Today we're going to look at Urbis, Manchester. I remember this getting built. I remember when they initially started this one. So I think it's Ian Simpson Architects at that point, who are now Simpson Hawk Architects, I think they're now called. And they were doing all of the kind of major new buildings in Manchester, really kind of Manchester-focused practice. As a practice, I think a real understanding of glass and how that works and how you build with it. You know, when you look at the Urbis building, you're not looking at structure. Quite often you look at other buildings and what you're looking at is the structural elements with the glass infill, whereas when you look at this one, it looks like it's just made of glass or carved from a piece of glass. And it's quite an interesting one. It's a really interesting site. It's really tight corner. It's quite like the Flatiron building in New York, that kind of classic, you know, looking at the point on the end of a really triangular wedge-shaped thing that widens out. But this one obviously slopes outwards, but also down from top to bottom as well. So there's kind of three-dimensional play in it. I think it's really interesting. It's right in the centre of Manchester. It's kind of around the whole public square element. It's part of a much bigger development, and this was the kind of, I think, the kind of cultural part of it. So it opened initially as a kind of museum of the city. It was about Manchester. It was a Manchester practice doing a building for Manchester, about Manchester, in Manchester. It was that kind of classic thing where, you know, when you look at the growth of Manchester and the development of the city now, a lot of it goes back to that era of Manchester just being proud of itself and being comfortable with that in a way that other cities aren't always. I think that then changed. It didn't necessarily work as that museum for as long, and it's now the National Museum of Football, which again is quite an interesting one because it feels like that should be somewhere at a stadium or, you know, by a football pitch, and instead it's a really urban site with the Museum of Football in the centre of town, which I think in that sense is really interesting. So its purpose has changed. You know, it started as the Museum of City Life in Manchester, it's now the National Museum of Football. So the idea that the purpose can vary and change quite significantly during the life of a building, I think in one sense means it's quite successful. It's not solely reliant on what's happening inside it to give it its purpose, to give it its kind of look, its aesthetic. I mean, I've visited a couple of times and there's something, you know, its shape, it tapers from kind of low to high, so it's got, and then there's this kind of flag point, kind of spire at the top, almost a kind of contemporary spire, that signals the end of it. So a bit of a civic gesture. It closes off a square. So, you know, rather than the square being open just to the road, what you've got is you've got this kind of building wrapping around it. So it gives an edge. And in kind of urban settings, edges are really important because you've got busy roads to one side, pedestrianised areas to the other. How do you separate them? And a building like this does that really interesting viewpoint thing. It reflects the sky, but if you stand at the right point, you know, it just reflects the sky around it. So it almost disappears, and you get left just with this, the corner point, the kind of flat iron element, and the other elements disappear. And it just sits really nicely on that junction. And these are challenging. Building with glass. Glass is not necessarily something it's not forgiving. You know, it's brittle. Glass breaks. Again, we've got a curved element on the end, and curving in glass it's complex and it's expensive. And the kind of lack of structure is a really important one, I think. It's that idea of it being a solid piece. And looking like that makes it really challenging. You're not just simply putting up a frame and then filling it, although ultimately it's probably how it is built, but how it looks is slightly separate from that. And again, it's an urban environment. It's a big kind of grand gesture building, which we're often a bit more reticent about in the UK. You know, if you went mainland Europe, grand gestures are quite common. We tend to try and blend in often rather than being bold, and there's a boldness to this which is very Manchester, and it makes sense. In that sense, it fits really nicely, but it doesn't echo the next door neighbours or look like the adjacent buildings. Back when they were Ian Simpson Architects, they were that kind of high-tech glass specialist in Manchester. That's what they did. They did, you know, there was an era when any exciting contemporary building in Manchester was probably Ian Simpson's that did it. Simpson Hawks just continued that. It's really about recognising the input of other partners into that practice, and the idea that, you know, architecture is very seldom a kind of one-person thing. So it broadens it out and recognises it in the name change. But I think when you see that, you start to see there's still a language. There's a kind of narrative of what their buildings look like and how they perform, and that use of glass is so important in it.
Would you have done anything differently?
I don't think I would change this one. I like this one. I think it's, for its setting, for its purpose, for its kind of public gesture and kind of urban importance, I think I would have left it as it is.